You know what the biggest mistake a corrupt officer can make is? Officer Ryan Whitaker whispered to himself as he glanced across the dim parking structure. Assuming nobody important is watching. The city garage beneath police headquarters was unusually quiet for a Thursday evening. Fluorescent lights hummed overhead, casting pale reflections across rows of parked vehicles. Rain tapped softly against the concrete entrance several stories away, sending cool drafts through the otherwise still air. Ryan adjusted the collar of his department jacket and checked the time on his watch. 8:47 p.m. Most employees had already gone home. That was exactly what he had been counting on. A dark gray sedan sat alone near the far corner of Level C. Nothing about the vehicle stood out. No luxury badge. No personalized plates. No sign that it belonged to anyone important. Ryan approached casually, carrying a small evidence pouch tucked inside a plain envelope. His steps echoed faintly through the garage. From a distance, he looked like any officer finishing paperwork after a long shift. Up close, however, his eyes moved carefully, scanning every corner, every security camera, every passing shadow. Satisfied that the area appeared empty, he reached the sedan. The doors remained locked, but Ryan already knew exactly what he was doing. Within seconds, he slipped the envelope into a concealed location near the vehicle, stepped back, and allowed himself a thin smile. Tomorrow morning, everything would change for the woman who owned that car. Tomorrow morning, Internal Affairs would receive an anonymous tip. Tomorrow morning, investigators would discover evidence that should never have been there. And when they did, Maya Brooks would become the center of a scandal nobody could ignore. Ryan looked once more at the sedan before turning away. "Your career is over," he muttered quietly. The words disappeared into the cold air. What Ryan did not know was that another camera, separate from the garage security system, had captured his entire visit from a different angle. What Ryan also did not know was that Maya Brooks was not who most people believed she was. Earlier that same evening, nearly 5 miles away, Maya sat alone inside a modest office illuminated by the glow of a computer monitor. The walls were plain. The furniture was older than most offices downtown. A half-finished cup of coffee sat beside several thick case files spread across her desk. Dressed in a simple navy blazer, she looked less like a powerful investigator and more like someone buried beneath routine administrative work. That appearance served a purpose. For 14 months, Maya had quietly followed a trail of missing evidence, altered reports, and suspicious decisions hidden deep inside the department. Every lead pointed toward a small group of officers who believed they were untouchable. At the center of that circle stood a decorated veteran with an impeccable public reputation. Officer Ryan Whitaker. Maya studied another document and highlighted a line with calm precision. Outside her office window, distant thunder rolled across the city skyline. She leaned back slightly, unaware that events already in motion were about to accelerate far sooner than anyone expected. Somewhere across town, Ryan believed he had just eliminated the one person threatening his future. In reality, he had just stepped directly into the final stage of an investigation he never realized was already closing around him. The following morning arrived beneath a blanket of gray clouds that hung low over the city skyline. Maya Brooks parked her sedan in the employee lot just after 7:30 and stepped out carrying the same worn leather folder she brought to work every day. The air smelled faintly of rain and asphalt. Around her, officers moved through the lot in small groups, exchanging greetings and discussing overnight reports. Nobody paid much attention to Maya. That was normal. She preferred it that way. Inside headquarters, fluorescent lights reflected off polished floors as the building slowly came to life. Phones rang. Elevators opened and closed. Coffee machines hissed in break rooms. Maya walked calmly toward her office, acknowledging a few coworkers with polite nods before settling behind her desk. Her computer screen illuminated instantly. New emails had already begun stacking up. Most looked routine. One did not. An anonymous message had arrived less than 20 minutes earlier. The subject line contained only 4 words. Search her vehicle today. Maya stared at the message for several seconds. Then she quietly opened a secure folder on her desktop and added a copy to an evidence archive. Her expression never changed. Across the building, Ryan Whitaker sat in a conference room reviewing paperwork with 2 supervisors. He appeared relaxed. Confident. The kind of confidence that came from believing every variable was under control. Occasionally he checked the clock on the wall. He was waiting. At 8:15, the first call came in. By 8:20, several department administrators had gathered near the command offices. By 8:25, word was spreading through the building. An anonymous tip had alleged that prohibited materials were hidden inside a department employee vehicle. The rumor traveled quickly. Faster than Ryan expected. Faster than Maya expected. By 9 o'clock, internal affairs personnel and command staff were preparing formal procedures. Maya remained seated at her desk when a knock sounded against the frame of her office door. Deputy Chief Leonard Graves stood outside. His face carried the strained look of a man caught between duty and discomfort. "Maya, I need you to come with us," he said quietly. Several nearby employees immediately looked up from their desks. Conversations faded. Keyboards stopped clicking. Maya rose without argument. She collected her identification badge, locked her computer, and followed him into the hallway. The silence that followed felt heavier than any accusation. People watched from cubicles and open offices as she walked past. Some looked confused. Others looked disappointed. A few avoided eye contact entirely. Ryan observed everything from the far end of the corridor. He remained perfectly still. The search began outside under a sky threatening more rain. Cameras documented every step. Supervisors reviewed procedures. Witnesses signed forms. Maya stood beside the parking area with her hands folded calmly in front of her while investigators examined her sedan. Minutes passed. Then one investigator paused. Another stepped closer. A small package had been discovered. Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Several officers exchanged stunned glances. Deputy Chief Graves lowered his head. Ryan finally allowed himself a slow breath of relief. Maya looked at the package only once. Then her eyes shifted toward the headquarters building where a dark security camera overlooked the entire lot. For the briefest moment, a nearly invisible smile touched the corner of her mouth. Nobody noticed it except one person standing near the command entrance. And that person immediately reached for a phone. The atmosphere inside headquarters changed within minutes. News traveled through the building faster than any official memo ever could. Officers who had spent years working beside Maya Brooks suddenly viewed her through a different lens. Some whispered near break rooms. Others exchanged uneasy looks across hallways. By late morning, speculation had replaced facts. Maya sat alone inside a temporary interview room, its pale walls reflecting the cold glow of overhead lights. A stainless steel clock ticked steadily above the door. She remained calm, hands folded on the table, posture straight, expression unreadable. Outside the room, Deputy Chief Leonard Graves reviewed paperwork while fielding calls from command staff demanding updates. Every department in the building seemed to have an opinion. Very few had actual information. Across the hall, Ryan Whitaker moved through the growing tension with practiced confidence. Colleagues approached him quietly, asking questions he pretended not to answer. He shrugged. He nodded. He expressed disappointment. The performance was convincing. After all, Ryan had spent years building a reputation as the officer everyone trusted. Decorations lined the walls of his office. Community awards filled display cases. His photograph appeared regularly in local newspapers. To most people, Maya looked like the suspicious one. Ryan looked like the hero. Shortly after noon, reporters began gathering outside headquarters. News vans lined the curb. Camera crews adjusted equipment beneath dark clouds threatening another storm. Someone had leaked information. Nobody knew who. Inside the building, command staff grew increasingly concerned about public perception. The department was already under pressure from city officials demanding greater transparency. A scandal involving internal affairs could damage public trust overnight. Around 1 o'clock, an investigator entered Maya's interview room carrying a folder. He placed it on the table and sat down carefully. His voice remained professional, but uncertainty lingered beneath every word. Maya listened patiently as he reviewed procedures. She answered questions clearly. Never defensive. Never emotional. Every response sounded measured. Precise. The investigator eventually paused and studied her. Something about her calmness felt unusual. Most employees placed under suspicion reacted with frustration or panic. Maya seemed almost prepared. Meanwhile, several floors above, a secure conference room remained locked behind electronic access controls. Inside, 3 individuals watched footage displayed across multiple monitors. One angle showed the employee parking lot. Another focused on the garage entrance. A third captured activity near level C during the previous evening. The room remained silent except for the soft hum of computer equipment. One observer replayed a specific timestamp again and again. Each review revealed the same sequence. The same vehicle. The same visitor. The same actions. Back downstairs, Ryan received a phone call. At first, his expression remained relaxed. Then something shifted. His smile faded slightly. The call lasted less than 30 seconds. When it ended, he stared at the screen without moving. Nearby officers noticed the change immediately. Ryan rarely looked uncertain. Today, for the first time, uncertainty appeared in his eyes. At nearly the same moment, Deputy Chief Graves received an urgent message directing him to bring Maya upstairs. No explanation accompanied the request. Only a location. Only a time. Graves looked through the interview room window. Maya met his gaze calmly. It was almost as if she already knew what was coming. And somewhere above them, hidden behind secured doors, the first pieces of a much larger truth were finally beginning to move into place. Deputy Chief Graves opened the interview room door and gestured toward the hallway. Maya rose without hesitation, collected her folder, and followed him through the building. The usual noise of headquarters seemed distant now. Conversations stopped as they passed. Curious eyes followed them from behind office windows and partially open doors. Nobody knew where she was being taken, but everyone sensed something important was happening. The elevator ride to the executive level lasted less than a minute, yet the silence inside felt much longer. Graves kept his eyes forward. Maya remained calm. When the doors finally opened, they stepped into a restricted corridor lined with dark glass offices and secured conference rooms. At the end of the hallway stood 2 individuals Maya recognized immediately. One was Assistant Commissioner Rachel Monroe. The other was Special Agent Daniel Mercer from the State Oversight Division. Neither looked surprised to see her. In fact, they looked relieved. Graves slowed his pace. Confusion briefly crossed his face. "What is this?" he asked. Agent Mercer answered before anyone else could. "A scheduled briefing." Graves frowned. "A briefing?" Mercer nodded. "One that should have happened months ago." The conference room door opened. Inside, several monitors illuminated the dim space with a cold blue glow. Financial records covered one wall. Organizational charts filled another. Photographs, timelines, and case numbers stretched across digital displays like pieces of an enormous puzzle. Graves stopped in the doorway. He had expected disciplinary proceedings. What he saw instead looked like the command center of a major investigation. Assistant Commissioner Monroe stepped forward and handed Maya a thin tablet. "We have confirmation," she said quietly. "The final evidence package is ready." Maya reviewed the screen for several seconds. Her expression remained controlled, but a subtle shift appeared in her eyes. 14 months of work had led to this moment. 14 months of long nights, hidden meetings, anonymous tips, financial audits, surveillance reviews, and witness interviews. Every lead had pointed toward a network operating inside the department. A network protected by reputation, influence, and public trust. Graves looked from the monitors to Maya. Then back again. Slowly, realization began forming across his face. "Wait," he said. "You are involved in this?" Agent Mercer folded his arms. "She is not involved in it." He paused. "She is leading it." The room fell silent. Graves stared at Maya as if seeing her for the first time. The quiet investigator sitting behind an ordinary desk every morning was suddenly standing at the center of one of the largest internal corruption cases the department had ever faced. Before Graves could respond, one of the analysts monitoring live feeds spoke up. "We have movement." Every eye turned toward the screens. Security footage showed Ryan Whitaker leaving his office and walking quickly through the building. His posture was different now. Less confident. More urgent. Moments later, another screen displayed records being accessed from a department terminal. Then another. Ryan was searching for information. Looking for answers. Looking for a way to understand why events were no longer unfolding according to his plan. Maya watched the monitors carefully. Outside the conference room windows, rain began tapping softly against the glass. Agent Mercer lowered his voice. "He knows something changed." Maya nodded once. "Good," she replied. "Because we are finally ready for him to find out why." Rain streaked across the executive floor windows as the investigation team continued monitoring activity throughout headquarters. Inside the conference room, the tension had changed. Earlier, everyone had been gathering information. Now they were watching a chain of events unfold in real time. Ryan Whitaker moved quickly through the building, stopping at offices he rarely visited and making calls that grew shorter with each passing minute. Several people answered. Fewer seemed willing to help. Reputation had protected him for years, but reputation was beginning to crack under pressure. Maya stood near the wall of monitors, studying every update that appeared across the screens. Financial records, access logs, communication histories, and evidence transfers filled the displays. Each file alone seemed ordinary. Together they revealed a pattern stretching back more than a decade. Agent Mercer approached with a fresh report in hand. 2 more witnesses agreed to cooperate, he said quietly. Maya accepted the document and reviewed the statements. Neither witness had spoken before. Both had remained silent out of fear that nobody powerful enough would listen. Now that the investigation was moving into its final stage, they had decided the risk was worth taking. Assistant Commissioner Monroe folded her arms as she read over Maya's shoulder. "This strengthens everything." Maya nodded. "It confirms what we already suspected." Across town, news coverage continued expanding. Television stations reported an ongoing internal review involving a department employee. Commentators speculated endlessly. Social media filled with opinions. Almost nobody knew the truth. Back downstairs, several officers gathered near the break room television. Some defended Maya. Others assumed the worst. The uncertainty spread through the department like a storm cloud. In another corridor, Ryan stopped outside an evidence archive office and stared through the glass. The room was locked. 2 oversight agents now stood nearby. Their presence had not been there yesterday. Ryan immediately turned and walked away. A growing sense of unease followed him. Every familiar corner of the building suddenly felt different. Every conversation seemed to stop when he approached. Every closed door felt like a warning. On the executive floor, a new alert appeared across one of the monitors. An analyst leaned forward. "We found another match." Several screens instantly updated. A timeline expanded across the display, connecting dates, reports, transfers, and internal communications. What had once looked like isolated incidents now formed a complete picture. Agent Mercer released a slow breath. "This is enough." Maya remained silent for several moments. She remembered the first complaint she had reviewed 14 months earlier. A small inconsistency buried beneath hundreds of routine records. Most people would have ignored it. She had not. One question had led to another. One missing detail had revealed a larger pattern. Now the entire structure was finally visible. Her phone vibrated softly. A secure message appeared on the screen. The sender was a federal liaison assigned to the case. The message contained only 6 words. "Final authorization approved. Proceed immediately." Maya looked up from the phone and met Agent Mercer's eyes. He understood instantly. Around the room, conversations stopped. Chairs shifted. Files closed. The waiting period was over. Outside, thunder rolled across the city skyline. Inside headquarters, Ryan Whitaker still believed he was searching for answers. What he did not realize was that the answers had already found him. The executive conference room grew quiet after the authorization arrived. For the first time all day, nobody rushed to speak. Nobody reached for another file. The investigation had reached a point where preparation was no longer the priority. Execution was. Rain continued tapping against the tall windows overlooking the city, soft and steady, turning the skyline into a blur of gray steel and glass. Maya stood alone near the window for a moment, looking down at the streets far below. Headlights moved through the afternoon drizzle like streams of white light. 14 months. That was how long she had carried the weight of the case. 14 months of listening more than talking. 14 months of allowing people to underestimate her. She remembered the countless meetings where her questions had been dismissed. The conversations that stopped when she entered a room. The assumptions people made when they saw a quiet black woman working behind a desk rather than standing in front of a podium. Most never bothered asking who she really was. Most never imagined she might be watching everything. Behind her, analysts continued organizing final reports. Agent Mercer reviewed legal documents while Assistant Commissioner Monroe coordinated communications with federal oversight officials. The room remained busy, yet the atmosphere felt strangely calm. Like the moments before sunrise when the world is still dark but everyone knows daylight is coming. Maya opened a small notebook she carried everywhere. The pages were worn from use. Inside were handwritten notes dating back to the earliest days of the investigation. Names. Dates. Questions. Tiny details that once seemed insignificant. She stopped on the first page and read a single line she had written 14 months earlier. "Follow the pattern, not the story." She smiled faintly. That advice had come from her father years ago. He had worked fraud cases for nearly 3 decades. Whenever emotions clouded judgment, he would repeat the same lesson. Facts create patterns. Patterns reveal truth. Maya closed the notebook and slipped it back into her bag. A soft knock sounded at the conference room door. Deputy Chief Graves entered slowly. His expression carried the weight of someone re-evaluating everything he thought he understood. He approached Maya carefully. "I owe you an apology," he said. Maya looked at him but said nothing. Graves lowered his eyes briefly. "I should have known there was more happening than what I saw this morning." Maya studied him for a moment before answering. "Most people only see what they expect to see." Graves nodded. The words landed harder than any accusation. Outside the room, headquarters continued operating as though it were an ordinary day. Officers answered calls. Detectives completed reports. Administrators processed paperwork. Yet beneath the routine surface, an invisible shift was taking place. Truth was moving through the building one step at a time. In another part of headquarters, Ryan sat alone inside his office. The blinds were partially closed. The overhead lights remained off. His desk phone had been unusually silent during the past hour. That bothered him more than anything. Powerful people usually returned his calls. Today they did not. He stared through the narrow gap in the blinds toward the parking lot below. Somewhere deep inside, a realization had begun forming. He could feel it approaching even if he could not yet define it. For the first time in many years, Ryan Whitaker was no longer controlling the direction of events. And the people who were controlling them had finally stopped hiding. The call came at exactly 4:17. In the afternoon. Ryan Whitaker looked down at his desk phone as it rang and felt a sudden knot tighten in his stomach. The display showed an internal extension he did not recognize. After a brief hesitation, he answered. "Officer Whitaker," he said. A calm voice responded. "Conference room 7. Immediately. The line disconnected before he could ask another question. Ryan remained motionless for several seconds. Rain continued sliding down the outside of his office window. The building felt strangely quiet. He stood, adjusted his jacket, and walked into the hallway. Several officers glanced in his direction before quickly looking away. That alone told him something was wrong. As he approached the executive corridor, he noticed 2 state oversight agents standing near the entrance. Neither spoke. Neither smiled. One simply opened the secured door and motioned for him to continue. Ryan entered conference room 7 and immediately sensed the shift in power. The room was full. Assistant Commissioner Monroe sat at the far end of the table. Agent Mercer occupied the seat beside her. Department attorneys lined one wall. Analysts sat behind laptops displaying charts, timelines, and evidence logs. At the center of the room stood Maya Brooks. Calm. Composed. Completely in control. Ryan stopped walking. His eyes moved from face to face. Nobody appeared surprised to see him. Nobody looked uncertain. It felt less like a meeting and more like the conclusion of something already decided. "What is this?" Ryan asked. Agent Mercer slid a remote across the table. "Please have a seat." Ryan remained standing. "I asked a question." Maya finally spoke. Her voice was steady. "You are here because the investigation is complete." Ryan laughed once, but there was no confidence behind it. "Investigation?" Maya looked directly at him. "The one that began 14 months ago." The room fell silent. Ryan slowly turned toward the monitors mounted across the wall. A video appeared on the largest screen. Grainy footage from a parking structure. A familiar vehicle. A familiar figure. His figure. Ryan felt the color drain from his face as the recording played. Every movement. Every step. Every second. Captured from multiple angles. Nobody said a word while the footage continued. When it ended, another screen illuminated. Then another. Financial records. Access logs. Communication histories. Witness statements. The timeline stretched across nearly the entire wall. Years of activity connected through thousands of documented details. Ryan stared at the evidence in disbelief. "This is impossible," he whispered. Agent Mercer folded his hands. "No. It is thorough." Ryan's eyes shifted back toward Maya. For the first time all day, genuine confusion replaced his confidence. "Who are you?" The question escaped before he could stop it. Maya walked to the head of the conference table and opened a black case file. Inside sat the original authorization documents bearing federal oversight seals and departmental signatures. Across the first page, beneath the title of the operation, appeared a single name. Lead investigator, Maya Brooks. Ryan looked at the page. Then at Maya. Then back at the page. The realization hit him all at once. The quiet woman he had dismissed. The investigator he believed he had removed from his path. The person everyone underestimated. She had been leading the entire operation from the beginning. And suddenly every assumption he had made over the past 14 months collapsed beneath the weight of the truth. For several long seconds, nobody in the conference room moved. The only sound came from the steady rhythm of rain striking the windows high above the city. Ryan Whitaker stood frozen beside the table, staring at the authorization file as though it belonged to someone else. The name remained unchanged no matter how many times he looked at it. Maya Brooks. Lead investigator. 14 months of evidence. 14 months of observation. 14 months of mistakes he never realized were being recorded. Slowly, Ryan lowered himself into a chair. The confidence that had once filled every room he entered seemed to disappear all at once. Across from him, Maya remained calm. There was no satisfaction in her expression. No triumph. No anger. Only professionalism. Agent Mercer activated another display. Additional records appeared across the screens. Statements from witnesses. Audit summaries. Verified communications. Every document had been reviewed and cross-checked. Every conclusion had been supported by evidence. Assistant Commissioner Monroe folded her hands on the table. The findings will be forwarded to the appropriate authorities and oversight boards, she said. The process from this point forward will follow established procedures. Ryan barely seemed to hear her. His attention remained fixed on Maya. Why did you never say anything? He asked quietly. Maya looked at him for a moment before answering. Because the investigation was never about me. The room fell silent again. Ryan glanced around the conference room. He noticed something he had overlooked earlier. Nobody appeared shocked by the evidence anymore. The people around him had already accepted the truth. They had spent months reviewing facts. He was the last person catching up to reality. Deputy Chief Graves stood near the wall, visibly uncomfortable. Earlier that day he had questioned Maya. Now he understood how badly he had misjudged the situation. I should have listened sooner, he said quietly. Maya turned toward him. You followed the information you had. Graves lowered his eyes. That is not the same thing as seeing clearly. Maya nodded slightly. The distinction mattered. Outside the room, word had already begun spreading through headquarters. Not rumors this time. Facts. Verified facts. Officers who had doubted Maya earlier now reviewed official updates arriving through internal channels. Many reacted with disbelief. Others with embarrassment. Several simply sat in silence. Inside Conference Room 7, Ryan slowly looked down at his hands. Years of reputation. Years of influence. Years spent believing certain people could be ignored, dismissed, or underestimated. All of it had led him to this moment. He had spent months focusing on titles, appearances, and assumptions. Maya had spent those same months focusing on evidence. One approach created confidence. The other uncovered truth. As the meeting drew toward its conclusion, Maya gathered her files and prepared to leave. Ryan looked up one final time. You could have destroyed me months ago, he said. Maya paused near the door. The rain outside had finally begun to ease. Pale evening light filtered through the clouds beyond the glass. No, she replied calmly. The evidence did that. I simply followed it. Then she walked out of the room, leaving behind a silence that felt heavier than any accusation. For the first time since the investigation began, Maya Brooks no longer had to prove anything. The truth was finally speaking for itself. The rain had stopped by the time Maya Brooks stepped out of headquarters that evening. The city felt different after a storm. The sidewalks glistened beneath the fading light. Reflections of office towers stretched across shallow puddles. Traffic moved steadily through downtown streets as commuters made their way home, unaware that one of the largest internal investigations in the department's history had quietly reached its conclusion. Maya paused near the entrance and looked up at the clearing sky. For the first time in 14 months, she had nowhere she needed to be. No hidden meetings. No confidential briefings. No evidence reviews waiting late into the night. Just silence. Just air that felt a little lighter than it had the day before. Behind her, the glass doors opened. Deputy Chief Graves stepped outside carrying a small cardboard box. He offered a faint smile. "I thought you might want this." Maya looked inside. The contents were simple. A coffee mug from her office. A few notebooks. Family photographs. The small reminders of an ordinary workspace that had never really been ordinary. She accepted the box and thanked him. Graves hesitated before speaking again. "People are talking inside." Maya raised an eyebrow. "About the case?" He shook his head. "About you." Maya glanced toward the building. Through the windows she could see officers moving through the lobby. Some noticed her standing outside. A few nodded respectfully. Others offered quiet smiles. Not because she had one. Not because someone else had lost. Because the truth had finally been allowed to matter. Graves folded his hands. "A lot of people are realizing how much they missed." Maya looked down at the box. "Sometimes. People see what they expect to see." Graves smiled softly. "I do not think they will make that mistake again." A cool breeze moved through the street. Somewhere in the distance, church bells echoed across the city. Maya watched as the last storm clouds drifted toward the horizon. Her phone vibrated. A message from Agent Mercer appeared on the screen. "Case officially closed. Excellent work." She stared at the words for a moment before locking the phone and placing it in her pocket. No celebration followed. No speeches. No cameras. Just a quiet sense of completion. Across town, office lights began switching off one floor at a time. The city settled into evening. Maya started walking toward her car. The same sedan that had been at the center of so much suspicion only hours earlier now sat peacefully beneath the glow of a parking lot lamp. She placed the box inside and closed the door. For a moment she stood there, listening. The distant traffic. The rustle of leaves. The soft hum of the city breathing around her. Then she remembered the first note she had written 14 months ago. Follow the pattern, not the story. She smiled. The pattern had led to the truth. The truth had led to justice. And justice, she realized, was rarely loud. It did not arrive with applause. It arrived quietly, like sunlight returning after a storm. Maya climbed into her car and started the engine. The headlights illuminated the road ahead. She pulled away from headquarters and disappeared into the evening traffic. Behind her, the building grew smaller in the mirror. Ahead of her, the city lights stretched into the distance. And for the first time in a very long while, there was nothing left to chase except tomorrow.